My Life as I Remember It, Chapter 2, Part 7, The Big House. A large building located across from our house and near the railroad track was used to store explosives for the coal mine. Dad was extremely safety-minded and worried about this building being so close to our house. He would go and check on this building several times a week. I went with him several times because the floor was covered with papers and magazines, and I loved looking at them. I never did figure out why the floor was littered with magazines. Then it didn't mean anything, but now I think about it and wonder why there was so much trash on the floor where they stored explosives. One day I picked up one of the magazines, and it was a catalog loaded with photos of toys, especially toy trains. This sparked my curiosity about toy trains, and when we traveled to Middlesboro, I always searched for the trains in the toy department at JCPenney's. One evening I was sitting on the porch with Mother and Dad, and a man was working on the tipple. Suddenly he started screaming because he had touched one of the electrical wires, and it knocked him into one of the shakers. Dad ran toward the tipple and switched the electricity off. Dad's quick action saved this operator's life. Dad was a boat builder, and he named his boats Miss Meals because of all the meals he missed while building the boat. He talked about being the only person near Norris Lake building what he called round-bottom boats. Most of the boats on Norris back then were flat-bottom fishing boats. I can remember watching him heat water to soak the wood to get the correct shape. After we moved to the big house in Anthrace, he built a boat out of aluminum. I can remember going with him to launch it in the creek behind the house. The creek rocks banged against the metal hull, and the noise was scary. I don't think he used this boat after that first test. I can't remember anything else about that boat. Dad was clever and a mathematical whiz. Once he built a boat using wood and wooden shipping crates. He built this boat not long before he died, and the reason he used wood from shipping crates is because he could not afford to purchase any boat building lumber. Dad was an improviser and decided to build the boat with whatever he could obtain. His first boat was docked at Hall & Rogers, now known as Powell Valley. He developed his own boat plans, and I wish I could build a boat and name it Miss Meals in his honor. I purchased some boat plans from Glenelg Marine, but I doubt I will ever fulfill this wish. Dad was respected for his attention to safety in the mine, and the men working for him respected him. He was always lecturing me on safety matters, and some of his advice saved my hide more than once. A few years ago, this story was told to me by one of the men who worked for him at Anthrace. One day, Dad was going into the mine to check on some equipment. He was in an entry to a room where several men were loading coal cars. At the moment Dad entered the room, he remembered a meeting that required his attention, so he turned and hurried out of the entry of the mine. Dad heard a loud commotion behind him, and when he looked to see what was causing all the noise, he saw all the men following him out of the mine. When they saw Dad speeding out of the mine, they assumed the mine roof was about to fall, and they followed him out. Dad turned to see all the men following him, and he said, "Christ, Kitty, what are you doing?" They all had a good laugh when they told him why they were following him out of the mine. I don't know where Dad got the expression Christ kitty. He didn't use the expression like he was being disrespectful to Christ. He didn't use profanity, and he had an accent in his voice that convinced some people he was not a Southern boy. I think this came about after spending several years in other places and the Army. Some people thought he was Italian, and some even thought he may have been Jewish. I know he was born near Jellicoe, and all his brothers and sisters were a little extraordinary. My grandfather, Alfred Payne, came to East Tennessee from Ashland, Kentucky. Betty phoned from North Carolina while I was working on this history, and she mentioned an occurrence that happened to her in Anthers. I have talked with her several times about this unusual event, and I will include it in my story. Betty and Mother were walking down the road late one evening going home, and Betty happened to look toward one of the houses in our neighborhood and saw a lady standing on the porch. This lady had a glow surrounding her and was wearing a long white dress. It really scared Betty, but Mother didn't see it. Betty told Mother what she had seen and wanted to get home quick. The next day, the news in Anthers was about a baby that died that evening, and the baby lived in the house where Betty had witnessed the glowing lady standing on the porch. This vision has never left Betty, and she said it was one of the most reoccurring thoughts from her childhood. I believe in angels, and she may have seen one.